The Geekorama podcast is brought to you by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for novels featuring the superpowered heroes we all love. Your hosts are
Trish Heinrich, author of the Vigilante Superhero Universe.
And I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Nostradamus Universe.
Hello, Jeremy.
How's it going?
It's a hard week this week. It's a very hard week.
Did you guys get the official no school for the rest of the year?
We got that like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, you guys were way ahead of us. We got ours yesterday morning, I think.
Oh, wow. For some reason, I thought you guys had that before us.
We still were holding on to the myth of May 4th. So I get all these text messages yesterday being like, so what are you going to do with your summer vacation now? I'm like,
oh my God.
Sit at home and eat more Triscuits.
Well, and you are a teacher, so you are still working.
Yeah. It's gotten better. Now that I know
Good.
what I'm doing, things are working out. But for us, it was a bank holiday on Monday. So on Monday, my college stuff, I have to put up stuff for the college class. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I can do that tomorrow. I have plenty of... Wait, today is Monday. Oh, crap. So at like 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, type faster. You need to get this done.
I hate that. We're at the point now where it was like, I woke up this morning, I'm like, okay, it's Sunday. That's great. And then I was like, no, it's Wednesday. Oh, crap. It's Wednesday.
Every time the meme comes around of like, it's February, March, May, April, I was like, that's officially what it is.
That's what it is, yeah. Well, and it is, we are reaching the point this week. It's just, we're a family of 4, and everyone's emotions are like way on the surface, way sensitive, so there's lots of explosive emotions, and we're not a family that's like quiet when we're angry. No, we like blow the roof off the place. Dan says it's what the girls get for having 2 actors as parents, and I kind of agree with that. So it's just been hard. It's like you want to be patient with your kiddos, because they're struggling, and my 7-year-old is having a hard time really figuring out why she's so angry. I mean, it's easy to say, well, my sister did this. And it was like, really? Like, that's not really why you're angry, is it?
Well, and now the only people they have to talk to about these things are parents. And there is a certain amount of social emotional, like you talk to your friends and your friends give you horrible advice, but, it's advice.
Yeah.
So now you're everything.
I know. And my oldest does have phone privileges because she has her own cell phone for various reasons I won't get into. So no judging me, people.
Oh, by all means.
So she has phone privileges with her friends. But, I mean, they don't necessarily talk about like, oh, it's so hard. Like, they will do role playing on there. So they each talk about what character they are. And then they literally are like, okay, so I'm walking down this like forested road and I see this bunny. And so the person's like, and then I jump out of the woods and I scare you. And they go, ah, like they literally do that, which is just so cool. I'm like, this is extraordinary. But she does it for like 3 hours. And I'm like, 3 hours on the phone with your friends. Oh my God.
But were you a kid when you were younger that would spend countless hours on the phone?
No. I hated talking on the phone with my friends. It was so awkward.
It wasn't until like my freshman or sophomore year that I turned into that person. And mostly because I had friends that were on the other side of the school district.
Oh.
And we could only see each other in school. So we would wait until like, prime time calling was over. And so we could talk on the phone for hours and our parents would be like, ugh, just leave us alone.
Yeah, no, I was never chatty on the phone with my friends, but it's good for her. But my youngest doesn't have that. So we're trying to figure out how to get a Zoom meeting between her and her 2 best friends that are twins, a twin girl and a twin, they're boy and girl twins. And they met in preschool and they are just the bestest of friends. Like, they're adorable together, really super adorable. And I love their mom, so I was going to, figure that out. Anyway, that's how I'm doing. I'm going nuts.
It, I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one suffering the crazy.
Oh
So
God.
that's good.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to update us about before we go into pop culture history?
Yeah, so really quick, that smutty superhero romance that I was talking about, woo!
Yes.
It got accepted. So
Nice.
I'm gonna hear back from the publisher probably in a couple weeks. It got pushed back because of the original release was to coincide with Wonder Woman,
Okay.
and they decided to push it back with the release of Wonder Woman. Also, it gives them more time and more flexibility to figure out
Hmm.
marketing stuff. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Um, and then my other big piece is I wrote the end in the book 2 of my Daughter of Nostradamus series. So
Nice.
I'm currently waiting on cover art. I'm test piloting a new editor right now, so things are happening, but there's like this weird lull. So I started working on book 3 today. So
Congrats. That's really awesome.
um, and the plot ended completely not at all what I thought was going to happen. Because in book 1, the character says, like, if you've been reading the series, you know the character lives to be 84. So how do you build up tension when
Yeah.
you know the death? She knows when she dies. And so it was kind of fun exploring a, a know-it-all narrator who becomes the
Hmm.
unreliable narrator, and I was able to do some trickery.
Ooh,
I,
nice.
I feel very impressed with my brain figuring that out in like 2
You should
chapters.
be. You should be. Congrats.
So good news across the board.
Woohoo. All
So
right.
what do we have for pop culture history?
We got some good ones this week. In 1947, in April, Jackie Robinson became the first African American in over 50 years to play on a professional baseball team. In 10 seasons with the Brooklyn Dodgers, I didn't know he was 10 seasons with the Brooklyn Dodgers, but awesome. He played in 6 World Series games, including the 1955 Dodgers Championship, and he also played in 6 consecutive all-Star games from 1949 to 1954.
So I'm just going to show some ignorance about sports in general. Were there African American teams before that?
Okay, so I don't have the most breadth of knowledge about baseball either, but at the time, so I know at the time that Jackie Robinson uh, was drafted into the Dodgers, uh, African Americans had been barred from professional baseball. There were Negro leagues that they played in, but that was it. And I think there was one um, at the beginning, like this would have been, if it was over 50 years, it would have been in the 1800s, the really late 1800s. And I think that there were like one or two um, African Americans that did play on whatever they had that would be considered professional baseball, and then they were barred.
I for some reason I just always assumed that Jackie Robinson was the number one. So
I did too, but I don't think that's correct. But I mean, I would have to dig. Like I said, I'm not the biggest baseball nerd either when it comes to this kind of thing. But if somebody's listening and they know, drop us a comment because I would love to know
I
specifically what happened.
I just know to scream "Go Red Sox" so that my car doesn't get egged. That's it.
Good on you. So this is super interesting. Same month, 20 years later, in 1967, Muhammad Ali refused to be inducted into the US Army because he was a conscientious objector to the war in Vietnam. He was immediately stripped of his heavyweight title and sentenced to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. For 4 years, he and his legal team fought to appeal the verdict. The other thing that's not included in here is he was barred from being a boxer. He was basically told, you can't box anymore. And
I
that was
knew that he
obviously
was an
over.
objector. I did not realize that he had his title stripped. And
Mhm.
I guess maybe I did know that he went to prison, um, but I didn't know that he had his title taken away from him.
Yeah, a title that if I read correctly, he won a week before he refused to be inducted into the Army.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, I wonder if they ever, again, not sports, so not my thing. Um, the unless it's Quidditch, I just don't know. Um, I'm wondering if they ever restored his title and gave him those years back.
I don't know. I do know that he went into prison in what many consider the real prime of his career. And he came out and he still won title
Yeah.
bouts. But there are a lot of people that really wonder what would have happened if he hadn't spent that time in prison for his career and everything like that. And the other thing a lot of people point to is there were white conscientious objectors that did not get as severe a punishment
Mm.
as that, not even close. So there really is a sense that Muhammad Ali was being made an example of.
Yeah, I feel that that's a pretty comfortable assessment.
Yeah. And the last one we have in 1978 in April, The Amazing Spider Man debuted on CBS and was the first live action TV series based on the character. Though it was a ratings success, it was canceled after just 13 episodes.
So, do you know what the opening the verse is for the Spider-Man theme song?
Spider Man, Spider Man does whatever a spider can. I
Yep.
don't know. Okay.
So
Spins
there's
a
a second
web,
verse.
spins a web every time.
Yeah, something
Uh,
something
spins
fighting
a web
crime.
every time.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know.
So there's a second verse to it that no one in the history of mankind knows the second verse.
Do you know the second verse?
No, and I had to look it up because I was humming it, and someone was like, "Did you know that there's a second verse?" And I was like, "No, there isn't." And they're like, "It's a full theme song. Like,
Oh my
there's
God.
more." So it was just one of those,
That is
that's what
weird.
stuck with me and has never left.
Well, I just CBS. It was really nobody understood why they canceled it because it was a success. It was considered a successful show. They gave it a very. It was 2 seasons, so it came on. Although only 13 episodes total, the second season was something crazy like 6 or 7 episodes, and then they just canceled it. They fireflied it, basically, is what they did. Because they wouldn't show it at the same time, like on a regular schedule. They would just plunk it in like
Uh,
randomly. That's why I say they fireflied it because that's what Fox did to Firefly. Um, and when asked why would you cancel the show when it was a success, they said, "Oh, we just don't want to be known for superheroes." Like that was their excuse, which just seems like a bullshit excuse. I think. Anyway,
ha ha ha, CBS.
I know, and
Joke's on
that
you.
exactly, and that is your pop culture history for the week.
Uh, do you want to go first for Geek Out? Or do you want me to go?
You go first.
Okay, so yay! I've been doing something kind of geeky. Um, I get yelled at a lot because I don't watch shows that apparently are good, and so Devs has been coming out on Hulu as a weekly installment, and I didn't want to start it because who watches things every week anymore? And
So passe.
yeah, it only has 8 episodes, so the season just ended. I think a couple weeks ago, or maybe even last week, and I was like, okay, let me check this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it stars the only person who I actually know in uh, the plot is Nick Offerman from
Oh, okay.
Ron Swanson.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me just tell you that you can have Green Arrow's abs all you want. I have Nick Offerman. And so he the show is very weird, and the fact that I can't tell you what genre it is, um,
Oh.
the there is a sci-fi component to it,
Mm-hmm.
and the sci-fi is very important to it, but I wouldn't classify it as a sci-fi film. Um, so basically, Nick Offerman has started this company. It's very tech industrial. We don't really know what it does, and one of the characters gets selected to join devs. Well, what is devs?
Okay.
We have no idea. And the character even goes, "So, what is devs?" And he goes, "Well, let me show you." Sits him down at a computer terminal, and there's just all this code. And the guy starts looking at it, and looks at him and goes, "Is this what I think it is?" And he goes, just walks away.
Huh.
And I was like, I don't even know what the show's about right now. Like, stop showing me code. And so, what we ultimately find out is devs is very much about exploring the idea of deterministic future, and that is a deterministic future is a future that can't be altered and is opposed to free will. And so
Got it.
that's part of it. There's corporate espionage, there's Russian spies, there's these
Oh my
beautiful
God.
landscape photography that happens at the same time. Like, this shrilling horror music is in the background, and so you think, like, is this a horror film or is this, I don't know. um but it's interesting. The plot is definitely worth exploring. So if you want something
Okay.
that is a little bit thriller-ish, devs is definitely interesting, and it's sciency enough that it's keeping my interest on the sci-fi front. I have 3 episodes left to go, and that's my treat tonight for getting all my work done.
Good for
So
you.
that's what I've been
Okay.
doing.
Well, for me, it's Nancy Drew is back from their mid-season break, and I've mentioned Nancy Drew before, but I really am geeking out about it. This is not, first of all, if you're a Nancy Drew purist, you will probably hate this show. Um, in the books, Nancy, there were like somewhat supernatural aspects, but Nancy would always debunk it and find like an actual, like, oh, there's not actually ghosts. This is what they did to make you think the place was haunted, or, whatever. But in the show, there are actual legitimate ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
There are seances that they can conduct. They accidentally open this doorway for these malevolent spirits to come in and wreak havoc. Um, they are now trying to pacify a sea spirit that they made a deal with, and they didn't uphold their end of the deal. So Nancy and the gang are getting these really gruesome portents of their future death. Um, so it's not your mother's Nancy Drew. It's probably not even your Nancy Drew if you read the books at all. But it is really good, and I am really surprised at how much I'm enjoying it. And I think that one of the reasons is because they took Nancy Drew, whom I've always loved since I was a little girl, and they did something different with her that still, in my opinion, maintains the spirit of Nancy Drew, which was always an intelligent woman who wanted to find the truth out about things and wanted to help people. She wanted justice for people. She wanted to help them. And she also just had this insatiable curiosity about the world around her. And that is still there. But you have, ghosts and stuff.
I like the Nancy Drew because it's kind of the middle point between Riverdale and Sabrina.
Yes.
It,
Yes, it is. I would agree with that.
just a little bit of the mysticism, but not, witches and black magic.
No, not at all. But you do, like I said, you have like a kind of a gruesome sea spirit that's, hell bent on killing them all now. And what I will say is, if you are super sensitive to creepy things, probably not the best show. There have been times when I've been like, I'm watching this alone, back when we all weren't in the house together. And I'm like, I'm a little creeped out right now. And, but yeah, it's good. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's kind of being my veg out place at the moment. So
Were the Hardy Boys part of, or were they like a parallel to Nancy Drew?
they were in the same universe, and they did crossover books. And there was this whole like kind of romance between Nancy and one of the brothers that every fan in existence probably wanted them to get together, but they never did.
I kind of hope in Nancy Drew that they bring them in. Like,
Me
I want
too,
it to be her
honestly.
show, her running everything, but some maybe some challengers from the Hardy Boys.
Yes, exactly. So we have a very special deep dive today. Remy, do you want to introduce us to the deep dive?
Yes. So if I can get another person to watch this show, I consider it a success. I was a fan from literally night one of when it was released, and I rewatched my favorite parts earlier today for like the umpteenth million time. Um, so we're going to be talking about Sense8, and I feel like we could probably do a 2 month long stint of only Sense8. It's
Yep.
kind of like my Netflix X-Men. Um, but tonight we're going to be talking, or this morning, I guess is when most people are listening. We're going to be talking specifically about Sense8 and their relationships.
hmm
Because the relationships in the show are something that I can honestly say I have never seen before and not
hmm
at the caliber it was done at. So,
Agreed.
Trish, do you want to talk a little bit about what Sense8 is as a concept?
So, um, it's it's first of all, it's a very high concept show. Um, it meaning that it's not just a simple, hey, it's a superhero show. I mean, I feel like it is a superhero show, but with a much bigger, broader scope. So there are like we are all mostly Homo sapiens, right? But there are different species in this show. There's a different species, and they're called sensates. And what this basically means is you are connected in a deep way, like beyond just mentally. It's more like spiritually at a soul level,
Mm.
uh, and a physical level, and every level basically to seven other people. And they call it, oh my God, what do they call it? It's not a pod, it's a
Cluster.
cluster. Thank you. So your cluster is made up of eight people. And the show begins with, and your birth, like basically, in order to be a cluster, you would have to all be born, physically born, at the same moment. And then you are born a second time from your sense 8 parent, which can be male or female. It's kind of like a spiritual birth.
And they describe it as the mycelial fungus, how they're interconnected. Like,
hmm
it gets really high concept as they explain the science
Yeah.
behind it, and you don't need to know.
You don't. But at the same time, I never felt really lost. They do a great job of taking this really super high concept and making it accessible. And then if the only thing you come out of it is, oh, there are different species of humankind, then that's all you really need, basically. So there are clusters all over the world. And this particular cluster that we're introduced to them at the time of their second birth. Their cluster mother is giving birth to them, which sounds so sci-fi. It's not alien-like, so don't think like that. But it's suddenly all these eight people are aware in a very deep way of these seven other people. They see them right in front of them. They experience them. It's like they can touch them even if they're not physically present with them. And this show happens literally all over the world. It is multicultural. It crosses all kinds of barriers in terms of LGBT representation, what it means to be a person, what it means to be a family. It's got beautiful representation, and not just for the sake of checking a box. It's really beautifully done.
And at the same time, there's also an evil corporation involved,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really know what's going on here. And at the first season, we just know that there's a man named Whispers that's hunting them, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't understand it. And as the second season unfolds, we get a bigger understanding of what this secret society, corporation, business, hunters are,
Mm-hmm.
and what it means to this species of people, and why they hide amongst us. Um, so there's definitely an origin story, a self-discovery story,
Mm-hmm.
romance. There's political intrigue comes into play.
Yeah.
Um, the and it's it's filmed. It was directed by the Wachowski sisters, and uh, most notably, they're known for The Matrix. And they take this very cerebral concept and make it extremely visual.
They
So
do.
if you have ADD, then this is the show for you. There's no blinking. You can't. It
No.
just keep your eyes open the whole time.
Well, and in that way, I feel like it respects the intelligence of the audience. They don't over explain anything really at all. And it's there in the subtext, it's there in a look, it's there in a, oh, wait, that person, because you share the abilities and knowledge of your cluster. So one of them is really good at hand to hand fighting. So when another one of them is trouble, she basically comes into that person's body and kind of takes over. So the way that they filmed it is you see them both at different points doing some really cool stuff. But if like you said, Remy, if you blink, you're going to be like, wait a minute, what just happened? Like you won't follow it. But I don't know. I don't think you're ever really lost in it.
And the Wachowski sisters did an amazing job of representing people talking mind to mind
Mm-hmm.
in a camera technique. So
Yeah.
the main abilities that we see are they can telepathically speak, but it's like you're in the room with them and you're talking to a person next to you.
Mm-hmm.
There's also you can be in the room with them talking back and forth, and those are two very separate techniques that have different ramifications. And then there's the big one that comes into play is the exchanging bodies in a time of need.
Mm-hmm.
This happens for everything from sex to um, like the hand-to-hand combat when someone all of a sudden is getting beaten up and we need the martial artist steps in and
Mm-hmm.
says, I got this.
Or someone needs to lie and the actor comes in and it comes up with a whole reason why this person should get away with something.
So we're starting out with 8 very individual unlinked stories whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
um, just to go through them, we have uh, Soon, who is being betrayed by her family in Hong Kong and going through corporate espionage, who is a practitioner of Tai Chi. We have Lido, who is a um, uh, South American actor and uh, does it extremely well. We have Nomi, who is the computer hacker. We have Kala, who is the Indian doctor. We have Wolfgang, who is the German thug.
Yeah, he's kind of a mobster. He's
Yeah.
kind of a hired gun for the mob,
And then
the Russian mob.
we have Riley, who is a Icelandic DJ, and Will, who is a Chicago cop, and Capheus. Do you remember where Capheus is from?
Gosh, I
Is
want to
it?
say Nairobi.
Oh, you might be right on that. It does start with an N. And he's a bus driver that works in a very rural area that takes people to the city to go to work. And so now you have all these very 8 distinct personalities who
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden are starting to look over their shoulder and see each other. And at
Mm-hmm.
first, it starts kind of like a ghost, and you're not sure what's happening.
Yeah.
And the beautiful moment is when they start realizing you're here. What do you mean? I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And they they're strangers at the beginning.
They are,
Um,
which is so extraordinary having watched the whole thing, but it's like, oh, but they're not. Like, because you see the evolution of this incredibly deep connection. It's
and
just beautiful.
and talking about the relationships behind them, they're related to each other through this supernatural connection, but um, every one of them has their own relationship story, and that is where Sense8 blows everything out of the water for me. Um,
Agreed.
Soon is dealing with a double crossing brother, and Leto is coming to terms with being gay with his partner and their best friend Daniela. Uh, Nomi is falling in love with this woman Amanita who accepts everything about her, um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Nomi is a transgender woman.
whose family does not approve of any of this, whereas Amanita is from a family where her mom has three husbands. Um,
Yeah.
which I think that's what it was. It wasn't quite said, but I'm just
Well,
guessing.
what is it? I think what she said was she had sex with all three of them so close to the time she would have conceived that she never wanted to find out which one of them was was Amanita's biological father. So all three of them were Amanita's dads. That's
And
kind of how they roll.
you might go, well, that's weird. And that was the whole kind of purpose of the show. Everyone is in an uncomfortable situation to somebody else. Like everyone
Mm-hmm.
has the yin and yang personality. Um, Kala's getting married to Rajan, who she doesn't think she's entirely in love with, but it's an arranged marriage. Wolfgang has his best friend who he considers a brother without the accidental blood. Um, Riley is in talks about her relationship with her kind of somewhat estranged father at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Will is dealing with his alcoholic father, and Capheus's mom is dying of HIV. And so quickly this show lumps uh, emotional baggage on the viewer, just like heaves it.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. In a way that doesn't beat you over the head, but in a way also like you got to pay attention or you will miss it kind of a way.
Because you know all of these characters and their relationships mostly by the end of the first
Mm-hmm.
hour.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a plot happening on top of that.
Yeah.
Whew, that's a lot to digest in 1
Yeah.
hour.
Well, and you have this weird like, why did this blonde woman play, which is their Sense8 mother, played, which I don't usually like Daryl Hannah. It is played by Daryl Hannah. I don't usually like her, but I like her in this for whatever reason. One of the first things you see is she's giving birth, although not physically. So you're like, what? She's in an abandoned church. The guy that you come to find out is Whispers finds her, and she ends up blowing her brains out. Like that's the first scene of the show. So on top of meeting all these people and all the baggage and all of the stuff they're dealing with, you're like, who was that blonde woman? And why did she kill herself?
And the first time I watched it, I was very focused on the plot because what who is Whispers? Why did that happen? What
Mm-hmm.
is Abraham like? What is his role in this? And what is Jonah? What is like? Is he double
Yeah.
crossing them? Like I was very concerned about the beginning, middle, end plot points.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it all the way through, cried at the end. Well, no, I watched it all the way through the first season, and then when the second season got announced, I was like, "We got 2 days. Let's make this happen. Let's rewatch." And on the second time, I think I've watched the first season like 5 or 6 times now. And on the second time, I realized I didn't care about the plot at all. All I cared about were the relationship storylines and how are they going to come to fruition in the next episode.
Yeah.
And it's elegant is the best way I can put it.
Yes. It's it's the best. I love I'm drawn to character driven stories anyway. I love the world. I love the plot, obviously, that these characters live in. But if I don't care about the characters, I will not give a shit about your story. And very quickly for me, although I loved the mystery and I wanted to find out what would happen, very quickly I was attached to these people. I was attached to their lives. I cared about what happened to them. And it happened with probably by the second episode, I was like, oh my God, I have to see what happens. I have to see what happens to Leto and Nomi and Nikala and all of them. Like, I had to know.
And not all of them are lovable characters. Like I really love that Capheus is driving this bus to make money to afford HIV drugs for his mom.
Yeah.
That's super noble. Will is a police officer. Well, Riley is just a drug riddled um, DJ who makes a lot of poor life choices.
A lot of poor life choices.
And
Yeah.
Wolfgang basically kills whoever gets in his way because someone's paying him.
He
Like,
starts off as a selfish asshole, honestly. Well, and I say that, but then once you actually know his backstory, you're like, not exactly. And that's where I feel like the elegance comes in, is you're introduced to them on the surface. And then as they deepen their connection to one another within the cluster, we deepen our connection to them as characters because we really get to know them.
and by the end of the series, so look, I got a bitch about Netflix on this one.
And
So
you should because they deserve it.
first season happened, yay! It was a success. It was a rating success,
Mm-hmm.
and people went back afterwards and they're like, no, it was low ratings. No, it was one of Netflix's top rated shows. So
Yep.
screw y'all. That's not the reason it got canceled. Second season got announced. Yay! About it was probably like the second day it was out. It was announced that it was canceled, and I was like, "Fuck you!" If I wasn't already borrowing someone's Netflix, I would have canceled it. And I I was only partway into the second season and I wrote Netflix. Like I was so angry that
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't going to get resolved that when I got to the end of the second season and it was such a massive cliffhanger and none
A
of the
huge
relationships,
cliffhanger.
yeah, like the relationships hadn't been finalized. There was a lot of things up in the air. The actual plot was unfinished. I wrote Netflix again, and like I started looking at like Sense8 tags on Twitter to realize like, wow, I'm one of tens of thousands of people that are
Mm-hmm.
pissed right now. And
Yeah.
so the the guy who plays Wolfgang spearheaded the revival.
Did
And
he really? I did not
yes,
know that.
everyone else was like, yeah, we would love to see this, finalized. And he launched a campaign single handedly. He is the reason that Sense8 came back for a 2 hour finale. Now, was it what we wanted? No, but we could live with it.
It
Um,
was pretty damn good. I was
it
impressed.
You can tell like they introduce in the second season new clusters start to show up, and
Yeah.
it's a weird game of telephone how only certain sensates can see certain other sensates.
Yeah. And I knew they were going to explore that. We never got that exploration. I was so disappointed.
And then it shows the weird little council of sensates
Yeah.
that uh
Like the
this is
ultimate mother, like
yeah,
the mother.
they were like, this is where we would have gone, but let's move along. Oh, it's so
I
sad.
know. You get glimpses of what could have been. What I appreciated in the 2 hour finale though was they brought everybody back. They found a reasonable way to bring these side characters that you do end up falling kind of in love with and bringing them into the final fight. And I so appreciated that.
And so here's the beauty of it is um, all of the characters have a partner of some sort.
Yeah.
Soon gets Junki, Lito and Hernando have Daniela, Nomi and Amanita have Bug, another hacker.
Oh, I
Um,
love Bug.
Wolfgang has an expanded mob situation happening.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of Wolfgang is the only one whose situation is way different than everybody else's, I felt like.
and his story gets extremely developed in the second season
It
to the
does, yeah.
to the point where you could see where they were going to pivot in each season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Kala has her fiance to be who gets brought in onto the plot. Um, Riley and Will really only have each other than the dad and Will's buddy cop dude.
Yeah, they're unique like that, honestly.
And Capheus winds up getting uh,
His whole village,
his whole
essentially.
village. He gets. We don't actually know what happens to the vote. It never explains it, but he, because of some great things that he does through the second season, he's up for a political position and he's trying to challenge the people who would steal water from his village.
Yeah.
Um, and
It's beautifully handled, honestly.
and the guy that he tried to kill, or that tried to kill him in the first season, winds up becoming his ally because he would rather side with his enemy than with corporations that would see his people dead. And so
Hmm.
all of these storylines are being brought together tighter and tighter, and
Hmm.
new relationships are being built and evolving. And
Yeah.
it's, again, the only word I can use is elegant. And now that I'm saying all this, I'm gonna go start watching the whole thing again. It's
Well,
so
and the
good.
thing, it is so good. And the thing I was telling Dan, because I actually just finished it yesterday. Um, Part of that is because when I have a show that I really, really, really love, it is very hard for me to finish that show. I don't want it to end. So I will procrastinate a lot, which sounds weird, but that's just how I'm wired. So I finally finished it yesterday. And one of the things that I have loved the entire time I've been watching this is how it takes relationships and it shows us relationships that we probably can label as unconventional, but the way that it does it is it's just is, and it's natural. You're like, well, of course. Like for instance, Lito and Hernando are a gay couple, and Daniela is starts off honestly as Lito's beard.
Yeah.
She's the person, he's not out. And Hernando is, they tell everybody, oh, he's Lito's bodyguard, and Daniela is Lito's girlfriend. When in all actuality, she's living with these two as their friend and giving them cover. And then when the cover is blown about their relationship, um, it's a lot to explain. Basically, Daniela stays with them and helps Lito. His career is shot as an action hero in South America. So she works with him to reimagine what his life and career as an actor could be. But what Lito and Hernando also do is give her a family. And Lito even says, "You're my family." And then at the end, we see the three of them together in bed, and it's not one of those, oh, but they're gay. How could they be with? It's no, they love each other. They're a trio. It's just, it's so beautiful.
And all of us had like questions going into, like, why is Daniela still there? What, like, is she,
Yeah.
like, what is their relationship? And don't get me wrong, like, I had the question, and when you finally see uh Lito and Hernando undressing each other and she starts pulling off one of their shirts, all of a sudden you're like, thank you for answering that. That's all I needed. And not,
Yeah.
almost kind of in a weird voyeuristic way, but at the same time, like, I felt like that was the relationship that they didn't give us. Like, they skirted around the topic, almost like we're
Yes.
scared to
Agreed.
do this. And when it was finally revealed, no explanations, no descriptions, no, this just simply is. Um,
Yeah. And you believe it because the way that they created that trio is totally believable. It's like, well, yeah, they love each other. And this is one way that love can look
and
like.
we have another. So uh, just to give you a rundown, Soon winds up with June Key, another a police officer. So she's a former prisoner and he's a police officer. Weird juxtaposition. Lito, Hernando, and Daniela get together. Hernando is actually the weird one out because he's an art history professor.
Hmm.
Nomi is a trans female, and Amanita is. I'm not even gonna give Amanita a gender because I think I would be overstepping my bounds there. Amanita is Amanita, as far as I'm concerned.
She is. She's incredibly unique, and I love
And then
her.
Riley and Will are two Sense8s that wind up together, which is kind of a
Mm-hmm.
faux pas, but let's do it anyways. Um, Ca-
Yeah.
Capheus winds up with Zakia, who is a reporter who originally is out to destroy him um, because she believes that he represents white justice. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, she comes to respect him and she apologizes and they begin a whirlwind
Mm-hmm.
romance. The one that had everyone hanging on by a thread because it was toyed from
Oh
first,
yeah.
like within the first couple episodes. Um, Kala is set to marry uh, uh, Rajan,
Rajan.
and but at the same time, she keeps seeing Wolfgang, and Rajan is the boy that she should be with, but Wolfgang is the bad boy that tempts her. And
Yeah.
so we are left, and I'm not kidding. This this made me mad. Um, there's a scene in the final episode where you think all like everything's gonna fall apart and um, someone's possibly gonna die and end this, and you flip out screaming at the TV, not because you were concerned about them dying, but because you needed someone to make a decision in this relationship. Which way was it going to go? And I was going to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
pissed if death answered this.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's a final scene, and there's this beautiful wedding happening in the Eiffel Tower. And Will looks at Kala and just goes, "Have you talked to them?" And she goes, "No." And he goes, "Well, what are you going to do?" And then the final scene happens, and Sense8 is known for having an orgy every season, and the last episode is no difference.
But let me be specific here. This is going to sound so weird. It's a tasteful
Yes.
orgy. And I don't know any other way to say it. It is a tasteful
So
orgy.
yes, there is some nudity involved, like no doubts, and definitely you see sex happening, but it is weirdly sensual and like
Yes.
it's so intimate in everyone's version of it. So it all of them go back to their rooms and they're having sex, and it's every different way you could imagine in every different scenario. And you see Kala with Rajan, and you're like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. And the camera just pans a little bit to the side, and Rajan looks over his shoulder, and Wolfgang is shirtless in bed, and he just pats the bed. You were like, yes.
I was honestly very surprised by that. I was like, oh my God, they're going to do it. They're going to do what I think they're going
And
to do.
so okay, like that was a great like okay, Kala finally made a decision. And they had led up to this because someone had asked her why do, why do you have to decide at all? And she was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Um and because you got to see all these other relationship types, I think it was a moment where Kala got to see, Lido, Hernando, and Daniela and go, "Oh, I I could have that." And
Yeah. Because she does end up, her love for Wolfgang and Rajan, they're very different. Her love for Wolfgang is very
mm,
visceral and it's very gut and it's one of those blood rushing to your head and oh my God, it's like hot and steamy. And her love for Rajan is quieter and it's a steadier influence. And so you have these two men in her life, very meaningful love for both of them. And I was glad that they didn't have her choose because I would have been sad no matter which way she went,
and
honestly.
so the last scene is happening, and there's all these people having sex, and I know I need to preface all of this with while sex is going on, it had nothing to do with the sex. There's in no moment do you watch this and you like, oh yeah, like this is hot.
Yeah,
You're
it's not pornographic at
no,
all.
and despite seeing breasts and buttocks and all whatever is happening, um, it's intimate, and you almost feel like
Yeah.
I'm watching the beautiful manifestation. I'm so gonna sound like some hippie on this, of these relationships happening. And, you know, it's a moment where I was like, oh, sex is a climax of a relationship, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it kind of was. Like it's the very end of the whole series, and it is a climax. It is a climax of completion in terms of like we are safe, we are happy, we are loved as a cluster, we love each other, and then we have these other relationships that we are loved in. And it was basically when they showed they show the couples or the trios together, and then they show like this huge room and it's just all these bodies together.
and
No, you see that you kind of see individuals, but then again you don't. It's this incredible
yeah,
unity and intimacy.
and and I
um
think so. This did a whole lot of things. The one I can safely say that I got to see myself on the screen for the first time ever. I have never seen a relationship style that has followed any of my past relationships. So this was the first time it was up on the screen. I was like, oh, I felt validated for the first time
oh
ever.
wow.
And that unto itself was just uh, a, an emotional gushing. Um,
I bet that's incredible.
the my so I am obsessed with music and soundtracks and how music plays a role in film. And so there's this the composer that's playing in the background. Like I literally had to look this up the moment it was over. Is Ludovico Einaudi? I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. He's a piano composer and does these beautiful things, and it's got a little bit of techno mixed in as a remix.
Hmm.
But it we see all these couples getting ready to have sex. They're uh, kissing and they're touching and they're being sweet and tender. And there's this moment where uh, Wolfgang is holding Rajan's head, and you're like, oh, are they gonna kiss? And they kiss, and the beat hits, and all of a sudden we just see an explosion of montages. In about 2 minutes we see every one of them, how they met, how their relationship started, how it
Hmm.
developed, where it was questioned. And it is the most gratifying scene I have ever witnessed
Yeah.
in media, period.
It was oh, I don't even have enough adjectives to describe it. I really don't. It was so beautifully done. It was so like elegantly, again, it was so elegantly done. And as a viewer, it was so emotionally satisfying. And I might start
I
to tear
know.
up because you do, like, you remember, oh, yeah, I remember when they met like that. Oh, God, I remember that. And then you see them kissing and embracing and caressing. And it's just, it's almost a catharsis because you've been on this journey with them. And it is so
And I
beautiful.
think the best part to it is, again, that climax, this sex, is the personification of all those moments. And you're like,
Yes.
oh my God, I want this. Like, and you've been
Yes.
along for the ride, and you're weirdly kind of like the other Sense8 in the story. And, like, it is
Yeah.
just elegant. So the only way I can describe this is there's a wedding that happens at the end. I'm not going to spoil it. Just go watch it. But the I believe the Prime Minister of France, ambassador. I'm not quite sure what her role was.
It's a high level official.
Has the quote. This is proof that for all the differences between us and the forces that try to divide us, they will never exceed the power of love to unite us. I've watched
That is, yeah, go ahead.
I've watched
No,
it
no,
like
go ahead.
10 times. I'm not kidding. Well, that scene I've watched at least 100 times, but I never rewound it far enough to re listen to that particular piece. And I realized, like, wow, the sisters wrote a love letter to their fans in their own show, and
Yeah.
it was just beautifully put. So,
And I also feel like that is the theme of the entire
yeah.
show. Right there. There is so much, there are so many times when they do talk about the divisions and how people are afraid of Sense8s. And I see that as kind of an allegory for how people are afraid of people of color and people who are gay and people who are trans and people who are pansexual, people who are from a different culture than them. And how really, yeah, there are a lot of differences between us, but really at the core, it is about love. And love is the thing that does unite us, really, at the end of the day.
So, let me just explain to you how much I love this show. And I think this is probably where we can end, because this will show a little bit of
we are running out of time, so go for it.
The last scene takes place in the hotel, but the scene leading up to that takes place on the Eiffel Tower. So I bought a plane ticket, flew to London, got on a train, went to France, went through a bomb scare at the Eiffel Tower, and held up my entire tour company so that I could go stand in the same spot where the vows were said.
You're straight up gonna make me cry, dude.
It was the end scene is the first time that they have ever closed the Eiffel Tower down for closed down the whole Eiffel Tower, and they did it for this. They only had, I think, 6 hours to film the whole thing.
Jeez.
So I think I read somewhere it was like the second or third take. That's it. So I get to the Eiffel Tower. There's a bomb scare. We all had to like run away. And then the tour company was like, well, we're going to go see this instead. And I was like, screw y'all. I'm getting up the Eiffel Tower. I was the first one back in the tower. I was the only one on the tram. I got to go to the top of the tower by myself. There is no other human up here with me at this point. And I got to experience all of France alone on the Eiffel Tower by myself and stand in the same spot where their vows were exchanged. So
that's incredible.
That's how much I like this show.
You're the mega fan. Basically, if you're listening and you are wanting something to binge on Netflix, please check this out. Please, please, please. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And I've had a couple friends say that they had a really hard time getting through the first few episodes. I did too. There is a storyline that I had a very hard time navigating through. It is worth it. If you have a hard time navigating through some of the transphobia or the transmisogyny, please just do it, because it is so well worth it. I promise. I promise you will love the show.
So I think that brings us to the question of the week, and I kind of have an interesting one. Not quite Sense8.
Okay.
I want to know, what is the weirdest thing someone has done in honor of their geekdom or their fandom?
Oh, good question. So let us know.
There is a Sense8 tattoo that will be happening once quarantine's over, just saying. It will say, in the end, we will all be judged by the courage of our hearts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I figure that's a pretty good one.
That's a good one. That is a very good one.
All right, so that's a show.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.